Giovanni and I are here today with Tim Slaughter, and Tim is the president of Caddo Office Reimagined, expanding the neighborhood office concept. And I can't wait to talk about this. If you're watching us on YouTube, Geo has one of their beautiful spaces in the background. We'll talk about the design inspiration in a minute because we were chatting about that offline. And Tim, how many locations are you up to now?
We're up to 8, all in DFW.
Yeah, I feel like every time I turn around on LinkedIn, new space opening, I'm like, when does this man sleep? How is this possible?
Great. It's great.
So I'm excited to dive into your story and just your perspective on, going hard in a region and flex office overall. You come from a deep, real estate background. We get to see you speak next week at Juicy in Chicago. Excited about that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my background is really started off in technology, graduated from college in 98. And if you graduated with that vintage of a college degree, most people went into some sort of technology because that's where the paychecks were at that time. And we were all like working on software.
Bubble.
Yeah. Right before the bubble burst. We didn't know, but like we all got paid to make the digits go from 2 digits for a year to 4 digits for a year. So that was great. And then got my MBA at UT. And then I was traveling a lot and didn't like the travel, unlike Geo, who prefers the nomad lifestyle. I got kind of old for me, and so wanted to settle down, got into commercial real estate, and haven't looked back. Really, my interest in real estate was because I lived in Chicago, where Jamie's from. And I had always been in Texas primarily, and kind of a suburban kid. But in Chicago it was weird. We had a car, but we didn't need the car. And the car just kind of collected snow and got buried in the snow. And
we were reminiscing about how you used to, if you dug out your car, you'd put cones around your spot.
Yes. Or a lawn chair.
Lawn chair, right? Most
Whatever.
Likely lawn chair, right? Who has a cone? Lawn
and
chair.
People would get mad if you like moved their lawn chair on the spot they dug out, even though it was like public parking. So anyway, but yeah, we kind of got a taste of the pedestrian friendly, transit friendly lifestyle in Chicago. So we moved back to Texas. We're like, where's that lifestyle exist? And this was 2001 in Dallas, and it really didn't exist in many places. One place that existed was there was kind of a demonstration of it at a place called Mockingbird Station. And I found the guy who developed Mockingbird Station, a guy named Ken Hughes. And after I got my MBA, I kind of cold called him and got my first real estate job with him, because I'm like, this guy gets it. He knows how to develop spaces like they have in Chicago, which are, pedestrian friendly, transit friendly developments. And so that was kind of my start. And then, fast forward a few years, hit another recession in 2008, 2009, got laid off as a developer, and started Caddo Holdings with 2 other friends. And, just started buying office buildings, had no business. All 3 of us were in our early 30s. We had no track record of buying anything. We had no net worth. We had no particular experience in buying and owning and being the general partner of any sort of real estate investment. And so we just said, hey, let's go for it. There's nothing better to do. So we found a building in East Dallas called Lakewood Towers. We got it under contract really cheaply. We found a friend's dad to help us put down the earnest money, which was $100,000. And we put all the due diligence and legal work on credit cards, and bought this 170. We found exactly one lender in 2010 who would loan us money, and exactly one equity partner, and then a few friends and family to bring in some additional equity. And we closed this 172,000 square foot office building, which was way bigger than.
Okay, so you went from we've never done commercial office space to buying 170. You're not like, let's just start with like a building on the corner. That's like you make no small plans. That's
So our trick, and this was a really, I don't know, where this came from, but it was like whenever they wanted to look at us and say, these guys don't know what they're doing, we're like, but look at this deal. It's a really good deal. Like,
Feels good.
look how cheap.
Don't look at us. Look at the
Yeah, don't
number.
look at us.
Yeah.
The building's $40 a square foot. So it was in the middle of Lakewood. It was a really good deal. And even our lender, who's still a friend of ours and an investor now, he was just like, look, you guys are great, but I'm the lender. And if I get it back, my basis is like, $23 a square foot. We can make it work. I can sell it all day long. So it wasn't because they believed in us. It was just like, yeah, the loan basis is really low. So
why did you go after commercial? Why office space?
Well, we kept losing on apartment deals. We thought apartments were interesting because we were used to.
Well, and at that time, there had to be a bunch of stuff in foreclosure and residential.
There was something about apartments, though. We kept coming back to, especially B and C apartments, is, there's something about kicking someone out of their place of residence. Ultimately, if someone doesn't make a rent payment and you have to evict someone, we didn't like that as an idea. And so, kicking someone out of their office for not paying rent is a far different proposition than their home. And so I'm glad that we've never had to do that. And so office has been a great place for us. So that was 2010. And, our next deal was nuts. First deal was way bigger than it should have been. Next deal was way bigger than it should have been. We bought 3 buildings from a lady named Lida Hill, who is, just a wealthy person here in Dallas, who just happened to own 3 buildings here in Uptown, and she was ready to divest them during that recession. And somehow we got in the mix, and we were competing against Lincoln Property Company. Lincoln Property Company, had a very long history and had as much credibility as anyone in the country to buy those office buildings. And we had so little credibility, it wasn't funny. I mean, you couldn't have less credibility than Caddo Holdings, who had bought 1 office building. And so it's just funny how things work out. But we had, through our entrepreneurial activity, we had earned a commission of $100,000 selling some land. And we took the $100,000 and we just said, all right, these 3 Uptown buildings, we're going to put that earnest money hard day one on these 3 Uptown buildings. And we told the asset manager at the time, we said, look, we know this is, $38 million worth of office buildings, and this is only $100,000 worth of earnest money, which, as Gio knows, is nothing for that amount of office buildings. But it's hard day one, no exceptions, and it's all we got. And you know what? They liked that. They were like, you know what? We're going to give these guys a shot. And our partner on the Lakewood deal really liked that opportunity as well. And that was our second deal together. And man, that turned out to be a real home run for us. And so, we went from 1 building to 4 buildings overnight, and it just launched us as a company. All of a sudden, our property management company was in the black. And we were, we had a platform at that point where we could, go out and hire people and cover some corporate overhead. And then, we were sort of an office, we were an office sponsor. So we owned the real estate, but we also were the property management, which, for traditional commercial, you earn sort of a 3% fee on that. You can also lease your own buildings, but what we found over time was that was difficult. There's so many good leasing professionals out there. It's so competitive. It's really hard to cover the market well with your in-house leasing, especially if you only have 200,000 or 300,000 feet, which, or even 400,000 or 500,000 feet. You got to have like 5 million square feet to really start to do a good job of leasing in-house. And even then it's difficult. So we just started hiring third-party leasing agents who did a really good job. So that's kind of what we did. We were office sponsors for a good 10-year run, and we did a little industrial in there. And then that model got a little long in the tooth. We came across a co-working operator, Jaeger Office Suites, about 2017. They had built 4 standalone ground-up locations in DFW. They were the oldest one was 8 or 9 years old. This was an operation that came out of Indianapolis. They had built 8 there successfully and proven up the business model, moved down here to enter a new market. And we are very risk averse. We don't put a lot of debt on our buildings, and so it was really attractive to us if we were going to enter a new asset class, co-working, to go with something that was working already. And so, but we looked at it for 2 years before we decided to pull the trigger and buy these buildings, because we weren't sure we could get get a bank to give us a loan on it. We weren't sure we could raise the equity for it. So we really kicked the tires for a long time. We weren't sure we could operate it. And so we kicked the tires for a long time. And then we basically put the deal together and bought it 3 years ago. And that's the kind of the seed of what is now Caddo Office Reimagined. So sorry for the long intro, but that's.
No, I mean, that's perfect. And that's what I was most excited about. And, Jamie, Tim airs on your side more than mine. He texted me yesterday, was like, what exactly are we discussing? So I did give him a little bit of a breakdown. I think that's what I'm most excited about overall, right? Is we're seeing more and more people from a traditional office background that are making the transition and understand the real estate in a different way as opposed to the operation side. Yeah. And so, I mean, Tim is, and he hasn't jumped into this, but he's got 2 other partners that have an extensive background in real estate that's different from his. So, yep. Tim, you want to kind of that?
Yeah. So my 2 partners, so we split up the workload because it's a lot. It's hard to do everything. There's a lot to do when you own and operate this stuff. I mean, so it breaks up pretty nicely. We're vertically integrated, so we acquire and develop the new location. So I have one partner, Justin, who that's his primary responsibility is acquisitions and development. So we're now 8 locations. Some of those locations we have developed either through buying a building and repositioning the building through renovation, or we've also developed from the ground up. We've also acquired others' buildings. So we've acquired an asset from Fuse, which was here in Prosper, and we acquired another building from Jaeger. So we've been busy on that end. And then I've got a partner who is on the fundraising side, who's raising equity. And so we have about 200 investors, and anywhere from $100,000 to $2.5–3 million. And that's a lot of work for keeping track of those people. We have 3 different funds that have invested in those 8 properties, and it's a hard way to do it. But this kind of thing is not something that traditional equity has understood yet as an asset class. I would call it something like an alternative. It'll get there, and we're working to try to educate folks on that, but it's just not there yet. So it's good for sort of individual investors and family offices right now, because we can get in there and tell the story. They can make an investment at a smaller level and sort of take a flyer and see how it goes. And so far, so good. We're making distributions and they're happy.
So are those investors invested in both the assets and the operating business? How do you structure that? No.
Nope, just the real estate right now.
Just the real estate, not the operating business. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. But I love that, because it's the lever to get the real estate, and the model works so much better when you own the real estate.
Right.
And it's really hard to raise money on the operating business.
Yeah, the OpCo, it's and I think we did it that way, Jamie, because that's just the way, that's the lens we've always operated from. When you do a traditional commercial office deal, okay, you're the general partner. You go out and raise money from limited partners for the deal, and then you charge market rate fees if you're going to do asset management, property management, leasing. And that's understood that if you're performing those functions, there are fees for that. And we're doing the same model just for co-working. Now the market rate fees for those are up for debate, but we've sort of followed some, we follow some self-storage, we follow some office models, but that's kind of how we look at it now. Is there room to roll them all together into one? Yes, but we just haven't done it that way yet. So.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it too, is, I mean, just going back to Jaeger, how smart you guys were to buy an existing operation, right? I think a lot of people are trying to figure out how to how to organically grow this, but for you to step into an operation and look at it from an operational standpoint and bring your real estate background and shift and change as necessary. I mean, how much of an advantage has that given you, do you think?
Well, I mean, my motto for the first year after we bought those, honestly, was just don't screw it up. Like they were cash flowing really well. And I just didn't want us to mess anything up about that because we liked what they were doing. So I was just definitely afraid of doing anything wrong, to be honest. And it took me a while to sort of get the courage to make any tweaks whatsoever to what they were doing. And I really clung to Scott Yeager and sat there with a computer at his feet for like a good 30 days and just wrote every word down and like would call him and just be like, well, what about this? What about that? And he, that was part of our deal. And we still have a partner. They still have a small partnership stake in our management company. And that's just, we wanted that continued cooperation from them. And they've been great. Honestly, this is funny, but the first new location we opened after the acquisition was Lakewood. And the first person that I wanted on the invitation list was Scott Yeager. And I remember, when he showed up to the grand opening, and the person that I most wanted us to impress at that grand opening was him, because, really it's his baby. And, he had been working on it for 18 years and I just didn't want to disappoint him. It's like, you want to take his, because we're not the founders, right? There's no like, we just want to take it and move it forward and for him to be proud of what we've done with his concept. And, but yeah, it's definitely less risky way to do it if you can find that successful concept and build from it, because you're coming from a position of strength, rather than having to figure everything out. And that's how we've always been. We've never really, we've always bought existing office buildings that had some cash flow in place, and then we just turned the levers and, got the NOI from, it's only making 200,000 a year. Now it's making 500,000 a year. Now we sell it,
Okay.
Yeah,
So
and I think,
wait, can I want to
yeah, go.
any asset owner who's listening, I want them to like pause and hit rewind and listen and then hit rewind, listen again. Because your approach is so unique, I think. Like to sit there, I heard you say we weren't sure if we could operate these things. We really looked at it for a long time. And I know this was before the hype. WeWork was around, the market was really picking up. And just the assumption, you're looking at a successful operator and you're modeling, but you didn't look at them and say, we can do that. We're going to go do that on our own. Yeah. But I feel like that's such a rare mindset to say, well, they know something we don't know. So let's learn from them. Sit there in the shadow, like write down everything you say. Just don't want to screw it up. I see so many asset owners who I think just really underestimate what it takes to run this business and don't even ask the questions. I talk to asset owners, and Gio does too, all the time. And I just am like, oh my God, hold the phone. It is like fire, ready, aim. They're ordering glass systems before they have a floor plan and know who they're serving. It's so interesting. So this just must be sort of your part of your natural personality.
Well, I don't know. I feel like I'm still, like when I remember the first conference I went to was GWA in DC. And my head was just spinning because I'm just like soaking up so much, like I was in the operator class, and I remember like I'm the guy that's taking pictures of every slide, and I'm calling like I think I used several of the vendors like that were from there, and I went to the expo, and then like my head was just I have notes, pages of notes. I just like I was a sponge, and I love going to the conferences. I love you guys are great because you're just putting that content out there. I wish I had more time to absorb it, but there is so much out there. But it's like, I don't know. I want to listen before, and I'm deliberate. but I just don't want to, I don't know, maybe I'm too deliberate, but I'm more of a, let's gather some intel first and then make a decision, you know?
Yeah. So, I mean, what I love about you guys is again, you jumped into it. And here's an interesting one, and I'm not, you can unravel this one as much as you want. I'll leave it up to you. I'll say when that portfolio came out for Jaeger, it went around a handful of operators that passed on it because they weren't willing to pay what they considered a premium, right? And so the difference is they actually had an operation. They weren't stepping in to take this and build one, right? And I think right now the interesting part is a lot of stuff that's trading hands across the industry is mostly people that have failed, right? And so the valuation is based off of essentially what are you getting that's built, right? You're buying it for, it would cost me X to build, but if I can buy, then there's a delta there, right? And then, but the other side of it is the other stuff that's for sale are things like Jaeger, where someone's going, hey, we've built this thing to 3, 4, 6, 10 locations, and we're ready to get out of it, right? But they want a premium, but someone's got to come along and pay the premium so that they can build something, not maintain it the way it is. And so, is that kind of how y'all looked at it?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think when you're buying anything, you've got to believe that, in our case, we got to believe that there was some rent growth. When everything's 100% leased and nothing stays unleased for more than a day, you're like, well, maybe the rent can adjust a little bit.
There's a supply and demand
so,
here.
Yeah, and you look at the competitive set and you're like, 75-80% of everyone in the market, you just think maybe with a little bit, maybe not even any capital expenditure, you can raise rates. And so we saw that opportunity. But there's also just with any business, and you guys know this, the more locations you add, the more overhead that you can cover, the more fixed costs that you can cover, the more profitability that you can enjoy. And so the game is not to have 3 or 4 locations. The game is to have 15 to 20 in a market. And
I would say 3 to 4, to your point, is like a tough spot because you can't quite get to the overhead you need at that point.
It's not.
You're looking ahead, like how do you get enough locations to make the allocations for the, marketing and sales and.
Well, and 3 to 4, and these are 40,000 foot locations, Jamie. So, 3 to 4 begins to work, but what scares me is the 3 to 4 when you're talking an operator that has 8,000 foot location. I mean, I just don't even begin. I can't even say how that works. That's just.
It might not. I always tell people, look, don't walk into a location and assume it's profitable because it's open and it looks nice. Don't you think? I mean, you probably looked at a lot of. Speaking of Juicy, I'm moderating a panel with Flip Howard, and Flip sees a lot of pro formas and, kind of making the comment, like, you wouldn't believe how many people, like, maybe don't even know if they're making money, like, just don't have the, the business acumen. But I'm glad you mentioned the 40,000 foot locations. Was that right from the start, or is that floor plate shifted?
So that's something that Scott, I think, arrived at over time, because the locations that he built got larger and larger. And I think that's kind of where we've landed as sort of the, I don't want to say minimum viable product, but it's somewhere in that region. It depends on the submarket, right? But our Lakewood location is in the neighborhood of 50. It would depend on, I don't know how large we would go, but I don't think you'd see us doing anything below 30 or 35. That's for sure. And I think about it this way. I mean, for us, like, I can't imagine doing a location that's not staffed.
Right. I think that's the tricky thing about smaller locations is I think about that all the time. Like, well, what if you just took the staff out? It's like, it's really hard. really hard to create any sort of experience. You've got like a baseline commodity when you're not staffed, usually. I mean,
Well,
there's
there's certain things that are
Yeah.
okay to be on. I mean, like I was talking to a friend the other day who, they do, self-storage, and you could go in, and I could imagine, like I've signed up for a self-storage bay, and I just show up and I go lease it.
They all have apps now. I've never seen a human we have a storage space. Never encountered another person.
Don't care. Car wash. Don't
Yeah.
care. I mean, but office, I think I need to see someone for me. I just don't, and I don't know that changes. It's just kind of a high touch thing for me. And I don't know, apartment, hotel for me, I think that those are the same. During the pandemic, for the, Juicy in New York, I did an app where I didn't have to check in the front desk, and it was one of the worst hospitality experiences I've had. Like, I didn't like it at all. Just like, I didn't talk to anyone. No
weird feeling of So quick before Gio jumps in here, the 40,000 feet. So talk about your strategy. So it's your tagline. I have to look at your tagline again. Like, go to the office and be home for dinner. It's really not about going downtown, but you're not worried about filling 40,000 feet.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, we're locating essentially, you're familiar with red ocean versus blue ocean. So we're in the blue ocean of the suburban neighborhood market. So we're in your bubble. We want to be close to your kid's school, your grocery store, your neighborhood convenient things. So think surface parking, walk right in. You're not, the entire building is your office. There's no confusion. And we're not in an office center. So, it's kind of, it's refreshing that, it's in Dallas, there are several places where there's large concentrations of office, like the Galleria or Legacy or Uptown. And that is where, WeWork or Regis or Lucid or the traditional operators tend to cluster, because that's where office space is. And we avoid those like the plague because we're buying land. And we don't, one of our key differentiators is, place to work that's near your home, but not at your home. And so that is, as long as we have that advantage, we're going to park ourselves as far as possible. I think on average, we're 3.5 miles from any office center. And so, we may not win on design or price or anything else, but we're going to be closer to a bunch of people just by virtue of where we're located. And so that's a huge advantage in my opinion. And that's number one. Number two, I think, is, simplicity. I think it's confusing. There's a lot of products in co-working, I think. And for us, we only offer 3. We have a day office, we have a social membership, and we have an office membership. And so when you come in, those are the only things we're going to offer you. And if you want something else, it's kind of there's a jam theory. I don't know if you've heard of this.
I was just going to say, Tim, you must not listen. I probably use the jam study on my regular podcast or with my members like once a month. I'm like,
I may have gotten it from you, honestly.
Let's go back to the jam study, or like a business school case study. It's a Harvard business school case study. I love it. And I noticed that when I went to your website, I was like, wait, it all fits on like one screen right here. That's it. I love it.
Simplicity is really hard, and people think, oh, simple is easy. No, it's hard because you're tempted. Like, I see things like, I go to the conference and I see like piloto mail, and it's like, oh, we should offer these other things and do all this stuff, and I'm like, nope, do it.
So hard, especially depending on if you're an Enneagram 3, you want to do all the things.
Yeah, I'm missing revenue streams, but we're cutting down the confusion. And what people are finding is that I think it's easier to train our managers, and it's easier to have the conversation with the prospect who's maybe a little confused by what they've heard elsewhere. And so, and it's easier to write our copy. It's just easier to communicate. And screen share.
I had to screen share for people.
I was
it?
about
Yeah.
to say,
What's going on?
It is. So I pulled up your website. I've never spent any time on your website. I was like, wow, this is fantastic. It's
So that's
so
it.
clear. And I was like, wait, you put they get signage, they get all the things
Yeah.
just included. I was gonna be like, Tim, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Well, and we
love
include
I love it.
We don't charge for conference room time. That's another thing. It's just included in the rate. And so we don't do unlimited. There's you've got to dole it out through credits. But anyway, so we're the simplicity part is huge. The other thing we did the other day, which
That's it. 3 right here.
Yeah.
3.
The power of 3.
No scrolling. They're just right there. Yeah, it's so good.
We'll
put the link in the show notes for anybody who wants to take a look at this very simple, straightforward website and offerings.
The other thing we did the other day was we had, through these acquisitions and all this time has passed with Jaeger and all this, we discovered that we had 10 different lease forms that existed in our universe. And so we just said, you know what, this is going to be hard. Again, simplicity isn't easy, but we just went through a process about 2 weeks ago where we got everyone on the same lease form. So we only have one lease for Caddo now, and everyone's on the same lease. And again, that just makes it, we have over 1,000 members now, and you can't operate on 10 lease forms when you have 1,000 members. That's not scalable. And so we just got everyone on the same form, which sounds easy, not so easy, because hurt feelings and we were very scared about doing that. We had a grand total of 3 complaints and all that wringing of hands and everything, 3 complaints. So we're like, why was that such a big deal? The final thing that's unique about us is we do not lease out our space to anyone who's not a member. So a lot of folks will try to offer their space for events or hey, here's a conference room, use it. We just say, you know what, our spaces are for our members only. So we pride ourselves on member exclusivity. And we've decided to make that choice because our conference rooms and social areas are a precious commodity. There's only so much of that. And what we find is the dissatisfaction especially occurs when a non-member has a space book that a member wants to have. We don't tend to generate a ton of revenue from it, and it creates more than the lion's share of problems when a non-member comes in and trashes a conference room or an event space. And so we just say, you know what? We're going to forego any potential revenue in favor of our members. And our members know our rules and we can enforce them better with our members. So we just say, this is not a public place. This is for members. And so this is a member exclusive benefit. And maybe that's the wrong thing, and it also communicates to our members like, look, we're not trying to monetize everything.
I just love your commitment to your model, right? I mean, everything you just said, right, is it's hard. And I think that's where entrepreneurs get confused, right? And that's what's happening. Going back to Jamie's point, landlords see this new way of doing business and they want to participate in it, right? It's almost like you mentioned, the virtual side of business and the mail side and the outside co-working / conference facilities. And I mean, one of the things you mentioned was the uniqueness, right? And I mean, again, that's what I love about your space is I still remember the first time, I don't know, I don't even know who met with us. I think it might have been your 2 other guys that Charlie took me to look at your space in Plano. And I walked through and I was like, this space is so unique compared to most. I mean, so Scott and his team did a super unique job in how they designed the space for it to like stand out with, I still remember the bookshelf, the books along the staircase, or you and I always talk, still love it. Your monkeys, right? You have hear no evil, see no evil. What's hear, see, and smell? Hear, see, and smell. I mean, what's the right? I mean, so. But I mean, part of it is your unique build out, right? Is I think a lot of people are spending. I mean, I toured a space the other day here in Dallas, and they spent $280 a foot to open the doors, Right. And when I say that, to clarify, people, this is not new construction. This is just the build out of an existing building.
Just the interior finish out.
Yes.
We can build a building and furnish it for about.
Yeah. And so I think the unique part for you all that I love, that I use you as an example all the time, is how you actually build out the offices, the office fronts, right? Because you're not old stuffy executive suite that's all drywall, and you're not the new all glass office front that is so expensive. And so you actually have a combination of cutouts in the middle that you can see in the office, with some side lights, some lights above the door, some different things. So you still have different product differentiation and so kind of how did y'all land there, and kind of how much does it affect your pricing compared to just doing all glass?
Yeah. Well, and to clarify, we do have one location that sort of is more the, I would call it the WeWork, glass, and that's Prosper. And that was built by, Fuse, which is a different developer. And it's more that traditional glass. But I would say just knowing who your customer is and knowing who your customer isn't. And for us, our customer is a suburban customer, small business owner. So typically someone who their business has 1 to 10 people in it. Half of our businesses are owned by women. So we're not a male. Yeah. Half of our business owners have children, school-age children at home. We will not lease more than 10 suites to anybody. So I get requests, like even in our building right now that we're leasing up at Maple Shade or Plano South, we had a request come across from a broker, like wants to do 50 desks. And I just said, hey, thank you for your request. We don't do that. And I do that all the time. And they're like, wow, we have it, but I'm not going to lease it to you. And they're like, what?
That's another no. That's really hard.
Or a member will come and say, hey, I want to lease my 11th suite. And I say, hey, it looks like can I introduce you to a broker? And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, it sounds like it's time for you to move on. Like, what are you talking about? Like, yeah, you're too big for us. And well, why are you saying that? You're in business to lease office space. And I'm like, no, well, we have found that it's actually not good for us to allow our members to get too large in the space. We're not set up for it. So we are really set up for, Gio, back to your question, we are really set up for people to lease 1 to say 4 suites at a time. And really the preponderance of our inventory are 11 by 12 suites that are 4 walls and a door, some with external windows, some that are, the lower price points are interior. We try to get as much natural light into the interior suites as possible. Some we do through glass or side lights, some we do through transoms. We like the transoms because about 10% of our members are therapists, and that gives them the privacy that they're looking for, but also gets the natural light through. So I'm trying to think what else. We find that most of our suburban customers want the privacy of the 4 walls and a door.
So I was talking to an asset owner yesterday. It was the property manager. And I said, please tell her, put her credit card down until she knows who her members are and what they want. I said, because you know what you're going to do? You're going to put up those glass walls, and then your members are going to ask you to frost them.
Well, and
the sound is worse. And there's a lot of trade-offs with all the glass, and people just go straight to, it's more modern to have all the glass, and your build out costs are really high. And if that's not what your customer wants, you're clearly very thoughtful, intentional, and disciplined about what you do, but your spaces are gorgeous. I could not love that more. I love that. It's so creative.
Well, thank you. I mean, the weak link in sound transmission in most of our spaces is the glass, to be honest.
Right. Of course. Yeah, exactly. flows right out. Sound. There's nothing to hold it in. It just goes through the cracks or through. I was like, my line is always, you can hear somebody pick their nose in a WeWork office.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing,
yeah,
they narrowed the hallways as well, and there's some other design features. We don't put a lot of effort into maximizing the efficiency. So in traditional real estate, there's something called the common area factor. And Gio knows this very well, but like it's like a cardinal sin. Like if your common area factor starts getting over 15%,
yeah,
people like want to slap they want you to cap it at 15%. Because we've had buildings with big atriums and stuff.
Yeah.
The great thing about co-working is that doesn't typically enter the conversation at all. It's just like, hey, how does this feel on the tour? And everyone understands it's like, this is kind of the sharing economy. I'm sharing the conference room, I'm sharing the cafe. I can go work out there if I need to.
Yeah.
So we don't really, we talk about how big this office is, and we have a few smart Alex who are like, oh, well, I'm paying $80 a square foot. It's like, yeah, you are, but you know what? You can leave at any time. We don't have any lease terms. Do you have a 60-day term at that place that's charging you 20? Can you share the conference rooms with free credits? Is the janitorial included? Is the internet included?
Right.
Is it staff? So you start to like, how do we get to apples on that? But it's just, it's hard to have that conversation. And it's like, that's the other thing I wanted to quick little change of subject, but like, and something hopefully we can talk about at Juicy is just like, that's how we got to get these listing services like to, I think the ones that are focused on co-working get it, but like LoopNet and CoStar, it's like, they still want to list everything on a per square foot. And it's like, man,
yeah,
we don't do it that way in this industry, but they still have a lot of volume on those platforms. And and we can't get them. I tried to get my LoopNet CoStar guys like, hey, grab some of your execs, come to Juicy. This is one of the highest growth office segments, and I've never seen CoStar or LoopNet at one of these conferences. Why not? Why aren't you guys coming to this stuff, and why aren't you guys like grabbing this opportunity? And anyway, shame on them, but
yeah. So I get back to your unique build out. I think that's huge, right? You've got a lot of open area where people can sit and congregate, and it feels a lot more homey than a traditional office. And I think that was the intent.
Yeah,
the warmth that you have.
Yeah. Residential is the smash up that's what we're going for. Because
Residential, I like
yeah. Residential. So, if we're competing with a home office, if it kind of feels like home, it's soft seating and, but it's got a little professional bent to it. So, we have people that show up in shorts and flip flops and you're like, hey, it's your office, do what you want. And then we have people that are, coat and tie. So it's all over the board, but yeah, it is a very residential focus, but that's our market. That's where we are. We're not uptown legacy, and that's okay. I think it fits for our customer. So
can you tell me?
I think so much of what you do ties to your personality, right? And your obviously have a personality very much like yours, different in their unique ways, but I just think you're so laid back and you're always laughing. That's what I love about you is, you always cross your back and chuckle just like you just did. And so I love spending time with you just because of that, right? Is because I feel like I'm talking to a friend. And it's just warm. So what would your family say are the three qualities they love most about you?
Oh man. So it's funny, my daughter went to St. Louis this weekend to visit her boyfriend's family, and I got so many videos. There's a XFL team called the Brave Hawks or something in St. Louis, and they chant "caca, caca," like that's their deal. And since the kids were small, like if they're lost in a grocery store or, out in the fields, after soccer or something, that's how we find each other. And so I got so many videos and pictures of these fans chanting "caca," and there's signs of fans holding like their chant is like "caca is the law" and all this stuff. And I'm like, so now I've got to go to St. Louis evidently, and I missed my opportunity to trademark caca, but I don't know. Making bird noises, no. I don't know, just laughing, having a good time. Our family, we're pretty tight, it's interesting. We're about to enter a new era with the kids all out of the house and being Jamie and I were talking about, I think we share like this idea of having like a condo in Chicago to just enjoy being in the big city every once in a while. And that's something that, just being around the kids, and I don't know, that's something that I'm looking forward to. But I don't know. Does that answer? You said 3 things of what?
So 3 descriptors of your personality that your family loves.
Yeah. Bird noises. Puttering around in the lawn, and smoking meat in the big green egg, maybe.
Ooh, nice.
Well, I'll help you out. So the ones that I love about you that I enjoy spending time with you on are your loyalty, right? You're super loyal to people that you've seen and heard you talk about, your family, friends, your partners, your customers, right? I mean, we got to listen to that over the last 45 minutes, is just your loyalty to driving hospitality and service and making sure that their are taken care of, right? So loyalty's commitment's another big one, right? You're committed to the things that you believe in, both personally and professionally, right? I mean, there you see objects and chase them, but you know better, and you surround yourself with people that do hold you accountable to that. And so I love the commitment side of it. And I mean, I think the last part is just your faith, right? And I don't mean just the religious faith, but just your faith and believe in your core values and morals are important.
Well, if you don't have a little bit of faith as an entrepreneur, I don't know how you make it through.
Exactly. It's a tough road.
Yeah, there are days that you just you're like, oh, why am I doing this?
Gio, we got to wrap. I'm back to back to back today. Fortunately, we get to see Tim next week. Well, I don't know when this will air. So it might be after we've seen Tim, and Tim said his daughter and his wife are coming.
Yeah. So
have fun.
Hopefully y'all get to meet them. They're wonderful.
I'm excited about that. Thank you so much, Tim, for time and appreciate you.
Yeah, great talk. Enjoyed it, guys. As always, we'll see you next week.
Yep. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.